So we'll turn, I guess, to your book now. Obviously, you've had your own experience that you shared with weight loss. There's weight loss is a super polarizing topic. There's a ton of content and books on weight loss.
It is.
Why did you decide and feel compelled to write Fat Funeral?
Good question. So, obviously my personal experience was a large part of it. And unless you've gone through, unless you've lost a lot of weight personally, I don't think that you should be the one giving other people weight loss advice. And the second reason is that I thought that it wasn't so much that I thought that I would be so good at this in particular. Although I am a writer. I used to write professionally, and I enjoy writing a lot, and I wanted to write something substantial. But the real reason that I decided to write a weight loss book was because I was so disappointed by the quality of the weight loss books and the weight loss advice that was out there. So this was a year or two after I lost weight. So around 2011, 2012, I was in grad school for biology at the time, doing cancer genetics research, and I came across a list of weight loss tips that was featured on Yahoo or something. I was on lunch break at the lab one day, and I read, just out of curiosity and boredom, I read the list of weight loss tips that Yahoo was offering. And I remember just being appalled. The list had been kind of just thrown together with no real thought or care. The tips were not in any particular order. And I think there was like a critically important tip, something like, oh, exercise regularly. And then, but then the next one was like, take this obscure supplement. And I was like, what? And then, there was another nonsense tip about eating like low fat foods, like that misconception from the 90s. And, they didn't present any evidence for any of these tips. And having gone through this myself, I knew how ineffective this advice really was. And this was on the front page of Yahoo. Millions of people were seeing this. So then I started I thought maybe this is just an exception. So then I started looking at the weight loss books that were out there at the time and the other advice that was being given on, blogs and wherever. And I read about 40 weight loss books and countless articles and websites. And I became really obsessed with this. But I realized that this, that lousy Yahoo list of weight loss tips was actually the norm, not the exception. Something serious was missing from the weight loss industry. More effort was going into marketing and recipes than, careful analysis of the science. More focus was placed on these arbitrary short-term programs than on like really understanding food and building effective habits. And there was a lot of bias. And quite frankly, I don't think that most authors of weight loss books try very hard. They just seem to, throw some words on a page. They write really loosely. They don't offer much evidence in support of what they're saying. The book seems to be mostly like a marketing tool for some program that they concocted. And I think people really deserve better than that. You're telling well-meaning people how to change their lives. You should offer hard evidence about what you're saying. And not a whole lot has changed since then. Not a lot of rigorous scientific arguments are made oftentimes when you see people giving advice. And weight loss is a serious thing. Being really overweight is a serious problem. And I don't think that, weight loss advice has gotten the effort that it really deserved. And I can't guarantee that, you'll love my book. That's a matter of taste, but I can guarantee that I don't think anyone's ever worked harder at writing a weight loss book than I did. I'd bet my life on that. There are 1,500 citations to peer-reviewed scientific studies in there, most of which are meta-analyses, which are studies of studies. Because you can find a study to support like almost any odd point that you want to make in nutrition. And a lot of like so-called like scientific arguments are basically just people cherry picking studies to support beliefs they already had. And I wanted to avoid that. So I focused on these things called meta-analyses, which, you can't find a meta-analysis of randomized controlled trials to support any odd point that you want to make. So I really made an effort, like instead of instead of just finding studies to support what I already believed, I structured my beliefs around what these hundreds of meta-analyses in nutrition and surrounding fields were kind of saying. And I found some of the things that I thought or I believed weren't true, and I kind of changed my beliefs based on that evidence. And I wrote really carefully, and I took the time to research every sentence and every little point that I made. But that sounds kind of boring, right? Like 1,500 studies. I also put a lot of effort into making it fun to read, or like readable, or at least as fun as something like that can be. I spent a lot of time editing like the flow and the sentence structure and stuff like that, and trying to add a bit of humor. And the studies are referenced with citations in the upper right-hand corner. So you can see, if you want to, you can see in the back of the book, like what the information in the sentence is based on. But I don't go into detail on most of the studies so as not to bore people. Do you really care what the scientists' names were, for example? But it allows you to cover a lot of ground without getting kind of bogged down. But ultimately, this book was a response to that crappy Yahoo list. The book is organized around a short list of the most important weight loss habits that a person can develop, carefully ranked in order of importance. I call it the 5 golden weight loss habits. So yeah, that's what kind of led me to write it, and some of the driving forces behind it.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, a couple takeaways just listening to you talk. Like you said, anybody can take 1 or 2 or 3 studies. If you have an idea, just find something that supports it and then say, quote, in studies. But if you're talking about that many studies, you can't really fake that. And then 2, it sounds like you didn't even know for sure what you were going to write when you started. It was more so through research you're learning, and you didn't even, sounds like you changed a few things you were going to write just because you didn't want to obscure the data from what the data was saying.
The book really changed as time went on. I deleted whole chapters and even sections, and rewrote it a lot. And the ideas definitely changed over time as more, as I understood the science better. And it's impossible not to be biased. Like I'm biased, like everyone's biased, but I made as much of an effort as I could to really try to step back and examine myself and like where I was biased. But you can't escape it. There's no such thing as being, purely objective, but that's what I tried to be.
Yeah, we appreciate that. I will plug in too, there was some humor sprinkled in good areas, so it did add to the enjoyment of the book.
Good.
So,
yeah, I try not to be too boring, because I know, science can be kind of a dry topic sometimes, and I wanted to appeal to the average person. So it is very scientific, but it's not written to be boring.